The clamor for prisoners' rights has been unprecedented. As a matter of fact, many people think that prisoners, or inmates if you like, should be able to vote even while they serve their jail sentence. That has been on for a long time. But recently, INEC is planning to do something in that direction that is going to be subject to some of the amendments to the Electoral Acts to include them. But at least an organization has spoken up and said, look, it is important that we add prisoners into this particular feat. We have someone in the studio, the program's lead, Carmelites Prisoners Interest Organization, CAPIO, Godwin Uwo, who would shed a little light about the importance of having inmates vote or get involved in who leads. Good to have you. Good morning.
Good morning,
Thank you so
Mr.
much.
Uwo.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us.
Good to have me. Thank you.
Right. How did the news come to you when you heard that INEC is looking to see if it can add inmates into the voting populace?
In fact, it was like a prayer answered. You know, why do I say so? We have, over the years, clamored for the stakeholders, INEC, the Nigerian Correctional Service, National Assembly, to actually put in motion mechanisms to protect the rights of inmates to vote. Because our law, the Constitution, never actually prohibited them from voting. So it is actually an infringement that inmates are not voting in Nigeria during our elections. So I receive it with gladness, the news that INEC is actually making moves to show that inmates vote during our elections.
I know your organization has been in the forefront of fighting for these rights. What prompted the organization to embark on these kinds of things?
As a matter of fact, as our name implies, Carmelite Prisoners' Interest, you know, even though they are not called prisoners now due to the new Correctional Act, but then we as CAPIO stand to ensure that the rights of inmates anywhere in Nigeria are protected. So in that regard, when we got to know that sometime in 2014, 4 inmates actually went to court in Benin City asking for their rights to be observed in terms of voting during elections. And the Federal High Court, Benin, gave them judgment. And over the years, nothing has been done in that regard. So sometime in 2023, we began to implement a project we call Poll Right, that is right to get involved in the polls. So that project has seen us engage with stakeholders to ensure that the rights of inmates to vote is actually observed. So that is actually what prompted us. Observe the rights of inmates. They are still Nigerians. You know, no law prohibits them from voting. So what we are doing is actually trying to protect their rights to vote. Thank you.
This is right, you know, but then again, one would just be wondering, how will INEC, you know, plan to address the logistical challenges that involves vote registration and voting systems generally for those inmates?
Actually, when we engage with INEC and when we engage with Nigeria Correctional Service, they told us that they are ready. All they need is for the legal framework, the law, to be in place. So it is their job. After all, they are actually conducting elections for those in IDP camps in Nigeria. So there's no difference. Yeah, one may shout insecurity, but the men of the correctional service have over time told us that they are ready to ensure smooth conduct of election in the prison. So the challenge of how to is not there. INEC has told us that once there is a law, they will do it immediately. So the challenge, INEC said they are prepared. Nigeria Correctional Service said they are prepared. So there's nothing that is an obstacle, except that the law has not explicitly, as demanded by INEC, the National Assembly should actually pass a law instructing that inmates should vote during the election.
Also, how will your organization, try to ensure that there won't be vote buying? Because then again, during voting or vote registration or voting, you begin to see some of these politicians come to the prison to kind of bribe and all of that. How will you ensure free, fair elections, and also with the line of your collaboration with INEC? How would it happen?
Okay, over the years, when we apply to conduct activity in the correctional center, we are always asked to observe the rules, because it's a security setting and it's an enclosed place also. So it's only your access to the inmate is limited. You can only access them when the officers say you can access them. So I mean, of course, it's in Nigeria.
Know the corruption in
Nigeria. It's in Nigeria. So one cannot rule out the possibility of vote buying happening there, but the fact is that it will be minimal. If the officers are not, are not ready to compromise, it will be difficult for the politicians to actually buy the inmates. But we can still not guarantee what will happen, during the voting. That's just the
but there should be some certain level of sensitization from your end to the inmates to make sure that they know their right to vote to whoever they want to vote for, and not be open for vote buying and all.
As a matter of fact, we have a documentary that we actually produced last year. That documentary, what do? We train the inmates on their rights, and they actually were part of the advocates in that documentary, where they emphasize their right to vote as Nigerians. So they know that some of them are actually involved in politics before they have issue with the law. So they know all these things. Yes, we will continue to sensitize others who don't know, to know that your vote is actually what determines what comes to you tomorrow, because choices have consequences. So we should continue to do what we are doing, but most of them actually have this knowledge that what you do actually has consequences on what comes to you when your candidate wins the election.
I'm just imagining the environment, how it would look like during campaign period, when candidates come to the prison to campaign and speak to the prisoners about what they would do for them. I'm just thinking, for you, as someone who has worked in that space for a while, do you think a prisoner is psychologically in a good place to vote for the right candidate? Because, I mean, with all the stories we hear in correctional centers, people getting to, be sentenced to jail terms and they don't really serve it. We know the corruption that exists there. How are we sure that, the people who are within that space, when they vote for a particular candidate, that candidate is who they wanted to vote? It will not be corrupted by prison warders, prison leaders who would either in one way or the other threaten them to vote in another way, or if not, they are not going to be, giving a certain kind of assistance of some sort. So there's a whole lot around there already, because I'm just thinking through it now, and I'm like, I mean, can this really work?
Actually, there's a limit to what we can control. Where you see human beings, you see shenanigans, you see cost-cutting measures. But then, what we emphasize is for these things to be in their barest minimum. Corruption happens everywhere. We have continued to fight some corrupt practices even within that system. Voting may not be different. We have no say in how the correctional officer does his work. We can only preach what should be done, and then we're gone. The prison or the center is open from, let's say, 10 to 2 for a visitor. What happens after then? You can't tell. We have had tests of how, inmates relate with officers who work during the rest time. But you do what you can do. But just like taking a donkey to the stream, it is for the donkey to actually drink or not to drink. We will keep pushing that inmates do the right thing in terms of don't be corrupted, and besides, this INEC personnel will still be there. So if INEC, in fact, it is actually come from the point of vote buying, because if somebody receives an inducement to vote for, he can't do anything about it. Understand? More so when the officer is in collaboration with the politician. We can't do anything about it. We don't know what happens behind the scene. We go there within the time allowed and we leave. What happens? We can't tell. You can't tell. So it's to press it on the conscience of the inmates to say that whatever happens has consequences. If you receive 5,000 naira, and they are even more vulnerable to receive this money.
Absolutely.
Understand? Because a man in the street receives as low as 2,000. How much more are inmates who, even to buy paracetamol is an issue. So, but we keep preaching to them to do the right thing. Whether they do it or not is beyond our making.
What about the psychological balance that I spoke about?
No, they're actually down psychologically, because being in a place like that comes with heavy psychological weight. That is why every now and then we actually go to them with counseling. We have a project that will commence this week. That project is mental. It has a component of mental health awareness, how they will cope with effective mechanisms, because sometimes they use the negative coping mechanisms which compounds their woes. So they are down psychologically. But I believe that if there is if the process is in place for them to vote, we will volunteer to actually psych them up. We can do that. But then there's a limit. How can we cover the entire nation? It's just for us to maybe engage with other stakeholders. Nigeria Psychological Association, which has presence in everywhere in country, to say you can actually do pro bono, go to a facility center and try to lift up these guys psychologically so that they'll be able to make the right choices during elections. And that's what we can do.
For inmates in diaspora, expanding a voting right to inmates in diaspora, how credible do you think that will be, pose in the electoral process or outcome of elections in Nigeria?
From the news I saw yesterday, I don't think that diaspora is for inmates. I think it's for Nigerians in diaspora. Understand? Because we don't have control what happens in the prisons overseas. We can't even go there. Let's start with what with our
Nigeria.
Yeah, you can't go there. We don't have no, even though they are freer. The prisoners there are freer in terms of what they can access. I had a story about somebody who traveled with illegal papers and was on the verge of being deported. He said, "Let me be in prison. I'm better off there." No. A friend.
Yes.
A friend over the years ago. So let me stay here. It's only that you are denied movement, but other things you need.
Feeding,
the best of
watching
food,
TV,
watching TV. You can make calls.
Whatever business and all of that.
Yeah, because you can't move outside the four walls. You are limited to what you can do. But for us here who are outside, what's our lot? What's your lot? So most of us leave the house just to guarantee feeding and guarantee the other. Nobody is talking about luxury nowadays. So we are now concerned with inmates in Nigeria. And the news I saw was Nigerians overseas, not even inmates in prisons overseas.
Okay, we know that there are other reforms in the correctional centers that your organization is looking out for beyond the fact that you want inmates to start voting. Are there any other ones? Can you list them out, and to what extent is that being met?
Okay, for instance, you know, the Nigerian Correctional Act 2019 actually makes provision for vocational training. The origin of correction is actually reform and rehabilitate.
Okay.
But there is almost near absence of any of such program going on. So someone enters the correctional center and comes out not being sure where to go. And you know, when you look at the stigma that follows going there and coming, even your family doesn't want to do anything with you. So they return to the same issue that brought them to the prison. So we have been pushing. We have some projects where we actually empower the female inmates with vocational skills, so that when they leave, they have a place to actually follow back. We have a center in Oji River. We call it Center of Hope. It's mainly for ex-inmates. If you are willing, you come there, learn at least 3-6 months, learn a skill. While learning, you are working and your proceed is being kept for you. After 6 months, we can say, take this money and start something. But this is actually what the correctional service should be doing. So while we are doing that, we are also reminding them that this is your mandate. That is one. Second one is access to quality health care. For us in Enugu State, this is near zero. Near zero.
Near zero?
Yes, near zero, I tell you.
According to, like, is it something that you people verified, that there's nothing of such?
Okay, let me use Enugu Correctional Center. They have a clinic, call it OBS, Observatory. Understand? They have nurses. But do you know there's no single medical doctor?
No medical doctor?
Really?
Yes, yes, I can tell you
This
that.
particular Enugu.
Yes, yes. And usually a medical doctor caters for the whole state.
No visiting doctor at all?
None. If there are, is on charity. The same way we do.
Oh.
The same way we do. Every quarter, we go there for what we call medical outreach. But now we have a project that takes us there every week. Oji River, Nsoka, and Enugu, with qualified medical doctor. So, but minus that, there is nothing in place. Inmates buy their medication. Yes, and because most of them are poor, their access to medication is when we come from medical outreach. You see them struggling to have access to the place. And Nsoka, Enugu has almost 3,000 inmates. We can only
3,000?
Yes, 2,800 or thereabouts.
Wow.
You know, so we can only see maximum of 200 when we visit.
Wow.
So what happens to the rest, who can't even have money to buy paracetamol? So the few that, you know, are able, they pay ×2. So healthcare is one of the reforms that we actually, and these things are provided for.
They are?
Yes, so by the Nigerian Correctional Service Act of 2019.
The doctor should be resident in the correctional center.
The way is minus that. There's a way they arrange it that they collaborate with a secondary health facility within the town. But this has not been done because government will not be able to employ the the medical people needed. So let them devise a means where maybe from Parkland or from UNTH, they'll be visiting doctors. What they do now is when somebody is terribly sick, they take him to, clinic outside. That has been a challenge because we have tried to take some inmates. They say there's not enough manpower to accompany us.
Not enough manpower
in terms of people they call arm squad. Those guys that they are busy now. So and somebody's life is at stake. Understand? These are the challenges that people in such a place.
What about feeding? From the news today, federal government is approving 1,200 and I think 1,225 naira per person. Do you think that is viable? Do you think this is happening?
If all of that gets to them, we even clap for the federal government. If all of that sum you mentioned goes to them, we will clap for the system. But before that money goes from the ministry to the correctional service and comes down to the state command, most of them must have developed wings. So what happens in a place like Enugu is that a certain in charge, certain year, ask them to cater for yourself. They cook there, even though it shouldn't be. They should be catered for by the government. But because we can't do it, and to avoid uproar, cook. So the practice is that if in a cell of 30 inmates, and there is 1 or 2 rich inmates, so they help to, but they don't depend on that. Don't depend on that. A place like Nsukka, the inmates are terrible. Last month, actually in November, we went there for medical outreach, just with our doctors, with our drugs. But when we saw the inmates, we had to abandon the drugs and go looking for food first.
Oh my goodness.
No, yes. We go looking for food first because they were terrible. You see hunger in them. That is how bad it is.
Just this morning, we heard that they actually have 1,125 earmarked for daily feeding for inmates in Nigeria. I mean, by what you are saying, after visiting, it does not look like that 1,125 even gets to them.
That's just the fact. It doesn't get to them. And that is the Nigerian factor.
No, but then again, you ask yourself, how much is 1,125 naira per day?
I said earlier that if that money gets to them, we will clap for them. We will. Which good food in any buka goes for 1,500? You say, I've eaten just one meal. You can just eat and say, thank God. So
and that's the amount for the whole day.
For the whole day.
And you say that there won't be high level of vote buy
and corruption.
Corruption.
I said it earlier. I said for us working, doing our job, we sell our votes. How much more somebody in a place like this? It's terrible. It's terrible.
But then again, how are the political parties reacting, civil society reacting to these new proposal, about the voting for inmates to vote? How do you think they will react?
In our engagement with INEC, we collaborate with other civil societies, Yaga Africa, and others, because it was actually, the engagement was at the high level in Abuja. So they are committed to saying that inmates vote in Nigeria. We have not engaged with parties to know what their opinion is about it. But then when we held a meeting with INEC and the Correctional Service in Abuja, invited other CSOs. One CSO took it upon themselves to draft a bill and submit to the National Assembly, showing you that they are committed to this cause.
Okay.
Understand? They are committed to this cause. So, but for parties, we've not engaged with them to know their reaction about the developments.
What about the inmates?
If I show you the documentary, they were actually pushing, because they know, or some of them know, that they actually should vote. Understand? So why they are not voting is still the Nigerian system. So they are eagerly looking forward to a day where they will vote. I don't know the reason for the eagerness, but I think the thing
with the level of our party, voter party out there, I wonder what you think, prompted that eagerness in them.
Because that right has been denied over the years. Understand? And adding with every many other rights that have been denied. So for them, it will be a step to pushing for other rights. So if their right to vote is granted, maybe they could use the approach we use, because we engage them in the documentary. So some were even saying, there's a policy that you don't record an inmate with their face showing. But some were even begging us to show their face, that we want this thing. I want to be seen to be pushing for this thing. But we ask them, no, we still have to respect that policy of the correctional service to protect your identity. So they are looking forward to it. There may be other reasons behind the eagerness, just like what we have discussed here, because it opens them up to more money and other things. It's a possibility.
Right. I'm also thinking now that INEC has mouthed it, it's not like it's an uhuru, or well, that since they have said it, next election these guys are going to vote. Now, how do you think that INEC should proceed in such a way that at least they can get the National Assembly to have these embedded into the Electoral Act and most likely into the Constitution? Because I know that the government even fought it. I mean, government was meant to obey the law, because the court actually gave a judgment and said these guys deserve to actually vote. So, government can say, okay, since you have won us in court, now let's see, let's see how it will work, using its apparatuses to stop or delay it. Because I know this particular issue has been ongoing. Even in the last election, there were communications about this particular issue, and it was not added into the Electoral Act. So I'm wondering whether you guys have that mechanism to also have some sort of connection into the government, to enable these things to actually scale through.
The good news is that INEC has come out to actually push for this. Before now, yes, they will say they are ready, but they have not made any concrete effort towards it. INEC is still the government.
Yeah.
Understand? So if they will be in the forefront of going to National Assembly and pushing this reform, I think it will see the light of the day. Because before now, it has been the civil society, pushing, and sometimes the government sees you as an opposition when you are the one pushing for. But if INEC will collaborate with, say, correctional service, who will actually host the election and push it through, I don't think the National Assembly has anything to lose if they make the reform see the light of the day. And so it even makes our job easier, since INEC has planned to now be in the forefront of pushing for the reform. Yes, we have submitted a bill, even submitted another memo to the Committee on Constitutional Reform. But from there, INEC will now continue to push. Who knows, before the next election, inmates in Nigeria will be able to cast their votes.
The same thing happened even in the last election. They just mounted it, they said it. And then it just came, and then before you know it, and you can imagine, this is 2 years to the next election. February next month will be 2 years since the last election happened. I mean, next 2 years we don't have a new election. One would wonder, why is there no speed regarding this reform to happen? So you would just see some hanky-panky game. They will just say it, and then when they get to that point of, oh, we cannot put this, maybe leave it for next time. And I know that bodies like yours, I mean, you have done a whole lot throughout this period. Is it possible to continue this engagement with INEC, engagement with National Assembly, critical stakeholders in helping push this champion this agenda? Because I mean, if you drop now, if you don't even talk about it anymore, these guys will just say, you know what, nobody ever going to ask about it. And the prisoners, you know, because they are handicapped, their freedom are actually being withheld. They would really not have the opportunity to do anything.
I think you are right. There is need for us to keep pushing. We actually came up with a framework for INMATE voting in Nigeria. That document is with INEC to actually adopt it for use. And what we will do is to then galvanize the support we got from other CSOs to say, INEC has said this, let's use it as a point to push them. Most of the reforms that we'll see are actually products of consistent pushing. Because when you drop, you know, most times they give you this news to make you relax. Okay, they want to do something. Okay, but then having gone through what has happened in the past, where it gets to a year to election, they say, okay, let's leave it for next year, as if it's a tactics to actually not make it happen. So we will keep pushing from our own end, leveraging the support of other CSOs. I think that's what we will continue to do.
Right.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Godwin Ubo, Program Lead, Calamites Prisoners Interest Organization, CAPIO. Thank you for your time and expository this morning. It's been an awesome time with you. All right, that's the discussion so far. My name is Belinda Nwobodo. We'll be linking you with Abuja Studio for the continuation of the Signature Morning Show.
My name is Charles Pius. Have a beautiful day ahead. Cheers.